Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.
She's signaling to her supporters, if I don't make it, I want you to, elect and put this person into office because I align with them on a policy level. And that's supposed to be the intent of approval voting.
Do you think it hurts Tashara Jones' brand of progressive politics that she just quasi-endorsed the preferred candidate of the police union?
My colleague Jason Rosenbaum and I were puzzling this out earlier today. And what he reminded me is that ultimately a race between Tashara Jones and Lewis Reed would come down to who gets support on the north side of the city. She needs his voters.
Yesterday's mayoral debate, moderated by our own Rachel Lippman and Five on Your Side's Casey Nolan, featured some revealing moments, and anyone who lives in or cares about the city would be wise to pay attention. It's crunch time for undecided voters. The primary is the first time St. Louis voters will use approval voting, mandated by Prop D, and the vote is less than 1 week away. And Rachel joins us today with the highlights. So, Rachel, welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. It's always a pleasure.
So it's kind of shocking to realize that the debate yesterday was 1 week out from the primary election. That's happening Tuesday.
It is, yeah. No, and this always happens with the March race. I think it's because February is such a short month that you forget that it ends on the 28th as opposed to the 30th or the 31st. And it's also just that this election is the earliest it can be. It's always the first Tuesday after the first Monday, and, well, Monday as March 1st.
I'm glad to know this isn't just in my head. It really is sneaking up on us here.
Oh, no, it's not just you. I've seen it on Twitter too, that people are just like, oh my goodness, this is coming up. And it also always follows, big election years. So we, get through national stuff, and then we're all sort of like, oh yes, there's local races as well too here in March.
So yeah, there's this local race, a pretty big deal local race. There's no incumbent running. There are 4 candidates. For the first time, we're doing this approval voting so people can vote for as many as they like. Is this primary still anyone's race to advance to the next round?
I think you're probably looking at 3 candidates with an outside chance of making it to the next round. You've got Treasurer Tashara Jones, Board of Aldermen President Lewis Reed. Both of them have run and won citywide, obviously, multiple times. Tashara Jones is currently the treasurer, and they have both run for mayor previously as well. Reed back in 2017 and 2013, and Jones back in 2017. So those are likely to the 2 candidates, I think, who are going to advance just out of, name recognition. Kara Spencer, who is the 20th Ward Alderwoman, that's down in the Dutchtown, Southeast St. Louis neighborhoods, may have an outside chance of becoming one of the final 2 into the April election. I don't think you're likely to see utility executive Andrew Jones in that election. He ran as a Republican candidate in 2017.
So this is basically a 3-person race for 2 slots with again, the outside chance for the dark horse.
I think that's an accurate statement, yes. You're probably going to see 3 of those Democratic quote-unquote candidates, even though they all run as nonpartisan now, advance to the primary. And that just has to do with, the way the city is. Yes, they run as nonpartisan candidates now, but, you've had plenty of people say that it's up to the, Democratic and parties now to make sure that people know who the Democrats are. And I imagine that's some of the messaging that is going on.
Mm-hmm. Now, as you mentioned, Alderwoman Kara Spencer, she is one of those 3 candidates who has a decent chance of making this runoff. But you say she has a harder job here. Do you think at yesterday's debate she made the impression she would need to make to move an undecided voter and get into the big 2?
That's hard to say because people vote for various different reasons on, they may vote because they like the person's policies, or they may vote because they just don't like the person. We all have seen that in St. Louis. I've talked to these individuals multiple times, and I had plenty of people tell me that she comes off as more polished than they might expect. This is judgment from other people that she makes the really good case for her policies. She has really tightened up some of her remarks. She doesn't, go on and on and on. She makes her points and she gets out. And she also had, at last check, I haven't checked the 8 days before, but at the quarterly reports, she had the money to be able to go up on the air and to send out quite a bit of mailers. So she certainly has the ability to, get the attention. It's just whether people agree with what she says or doesn't say.
Did anyone make a big impression yesterday, specifically talking about policy? Was there anything that, where somebody really staked a claim that could be important to this race?
I did not hear anything that, that threw me for a loop. Again, we're obviously so much more steeped in this than other people would. I would call the debate substantive, but not necessarily anything new. These are talking points that they've been honing over the last couple of months. The one person that sort of really stands out, especially on the issue of crime, is Andrew Jones. He is much more of the traditional, more aggressive policing, tough on crime language. But, other than that, there's daylight between these candidates, especially the three Democrats, quote unquote, Tashara Jones, Lewis Reed, and Kara Spencer. But you're not talking about, hugely significant differences in terms of kind of overall thought, especially when it comes to crime. They'll be the ones addressing, we need to look at the root cause, we need to do things like cure violence, we need to do things like alternate programs, alternate sentencing, those kind of things, alternate strategies. Like I said, not much new if you've been paying attention, but it was certainly a substantive debate.
Yeah, it seems like these are three people who might govern very differently, but many of their policies, they're at least speaking about them in the same ways.
That's correct. Yes, you don't, except for Andrew Jones, like I mentioned, they, are all speaking the same language around root causes of crime. They're all speaking the same language around equitable development. The other kind of bright line issue for, especially between Kara Spencer and Lewis Reed, is whether or not to privatize the operations of St. Louis Lambert International Airport. That is one of the stark differences between those two candidates is whether or not they think that is an issue that needs to be explored.
And Spencer is very vociferously opposed to that. And Reed has taken a position that it's sometimes hard for me to characterize. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he in the past has supported exploring it.
Yes, he would tell you that, no, I don't support actually privatizing it, but I think it's something that we need to look at. And, the payoff that you would get on the front end of that is certainly appealing to people. I can, absolutely see why that would be something you would consider, an almost $2 billion influx of money into the city, and you've settled debt and you have that money to play with. So, you look at it logically and you could understand why that is something that he advances. But he endorsed a vote on having the city enter into a lease. Obviously, it didn't happen. So he's definitely more supportive of the idea of it, whether or not of exploring it, whether or not he would say this exact lease is exactly what we want is hard to know. And you can't know that until you get a proposal.
I think it's fair to say with this debate, the fireworks came in the final question. This is when your co-moderator, Casey Nolan, asked the candidates who they'd support in the final round if they themselves don't make it out of the primary next week.
Yeah, and fun fact, he was thinking like this was not going to get answered. We just sort of threw that question in there like, well, this will be a good, quiet way to end the debate, a good out cue, if you will.
And it was not an out cue.
It was not. It was not. Well, it was an out cue. It was the last question.
But it really, it generated some debate. So I'm gonna play some of the clips from what happened in response to this question. Here's what Alderwoman Kara Spencer said. She answered this first. It was directed to her first. Here's what she said in throwing her support to Tashara Jones.
I have to say it has been exceptionally difficult to work with president of the board at the Board of Aldermen, and the board is run like a circus in so many ways. And I have to say that I really overlap in policies with Treasurer Tashara Jones in many fronts.
Now, here is how Board of Aldermen President Lewis Reed responded to that.
Oh, my God. Alderwoman Kara Spencer just cannot help herself but to spew hate. But the unfortunate thing, she has done the same thing at the Board of Aldermen, which is why she is such a divisive figure. which is why you don't see not one African American alderman supporting her.
And that is Lewis Reed. Now, Rachel, that was quite an exchange there. Do you think it was good strategy on Spencer's part to try to paint him as incompetent in running the Board of Aldermen?
You know, Reed and Spencer have been the ones kind of going after each other in this race. The mailers from Spencer. I have not yet actually seen a mailer from most of the other candidates except for Kara Spencer, and some of the ads that she has really do target President Reed. I think because, as she mentioned, with Tashara Jones overlapping with her in policy a little bit more, it does her absolutely no good to fling mud to target the treasurer. She may not necessarily personally like her, but if she wants to see her policies enacted, she believes that she has a better chance if Tashara Jones is elected, and she has someone that she could work with at the mayoral level while she remains at the Board of Aldermen. So if you're thinking about it strategically, she's signaling to her supporters, if I don't make it, I want you to, elect and put this person into office because I align with them on a policy level. And that's supposed to be the intent of approval voting, is that you are making the decisions on policies. You're saying, I could live with these candidates on a policy level. I endorse all of them in the first round. And that way, when you get to the second round, it's not a lesser of two evils choice. You're, supposed to have someone that you believe you can support, not necessarily someone who you think can get elected.
Well, what makes this even more interesting, as you know, Rachel, is what happened next, because then it got to Tashara Jones, and she explained that she had a long-standing relationship with Lewis Reed.
I know that at his heart, he definitely is putting the city first. So I would support Lewis Reed if I didn't make it through.
And that is Treasurer Tashara Jones. Now, Rachel, it's safe to say that this sort of triggered a firestorm on social media. A lot of progressives were somewhat taken aback by that answer. Do you think it hurts Tashara Jones' brand of progressive politics that she just quasi-endorsed the preferred candidate of the police union?
I don't know that it is necessarily going to cause any of them to not vote for her in the first round. My colleague Jason Rosenbaum and I were puzzling this out earlier today. And what he reminded me is that ultimately a race between Tashara Jones and Lewis Reed would come down to who gets support on the north side of the city. It does her no good to alienate some of Lewis Reed's voters in the north side by, turning her fire on him now. In the general election, sure, if she's elected, she would want, or if she advances to the general election, she obviously could run more negative, but it doesn't do her any good right now to say, no, I'm absolutely, against him, because she needs his voters. Again, I don't know that her saying, I would vote for Lewis Reed if I don't make it, is going to turn her supporters off. Maybe it does, but I think enough of them are not going to follow her instructions, first of all. But I think it was more of a signal to the north side, where she would need to get, significant support in order to be able to beat Lewis Reed. And that is a stronghold of his if she advances.
Now, I mentioned
I don't think it's an alliance that would hold if you get to the general election.
I mentioned that the Police Officers Association endorsed Lewis Reed. They also endorsed Andrew Jones. In their recent newsletter, they explained these endorsements, and they also claimed, quote, the D in Prop D, which gave us this approval-based voting system, stands for defund. They write, this entire election racket was devised and promoted by the defund the police crowd. They see it as an opportunity to advance their favored candidates and disadvantage anyone who has the nerve to be even remotely supportive of law enforcement. Rachel, do you think there's any truth to that claim about this new election system that we're trying out for the first time next week?
I mean, the police officers, it was one of the most disingenuous banners that actually went up on the police union's headquarters during the November election, which is when Proposition D was put into place, was, D equals defund the police. No, it had absolutely nothing to do with defunding the police. Any group is going to make claims about this, and, the union is obviously staking out its interests, but Yes, there were groups of individuals who were behind this effort who are more likely to be the ones to say police officers don't need, more funding. We need to look into alternate modes of policing, alternate programs like cops and clinicians. But we actually asked the defund question at that debate yesterday, what does it mean to you? And none of them said, all of them said, we need the police department. We just need it to look and behave and act differently. So, I mean, we all know the St. Louis Police Officers Association. We know what their goals and their end games are. It was the most disingenuous banner I think they've ever put up. Like, I got what they were, quote unquote, saying that, oh, if you vote for this, then defund candidates are going to come in. But no, it had absolutely nothing to do with defunding the police whatsoever. So, they're going to do what they're going to do in an effort to support their candidates, and they, may be successful. They may not be successful. Who knows?
It's interesting. Their effort to block Prop D was not successful at all. I mean, that thing did very well at the box office. I think, their endorsement of Louis Reed, this could be a true test of their power if this propels him into the mayor's office or if this ends up becoming something that people see as a detriment.
We know that Reed is probably going to win the southwest side of St. Louis. The question is, what are the margins going to be? And is it going to be a vote for or is it going to be a vote against? I mean, we all know that, St. Louis can and will vote against a candidate by picking someone else rather than it being a full-throated support.
And so when you say the southwest part of the city, that's a largely white area. There's a lot of law enforcement people who live there. They might well be voting against Tashara Jones or against Kara Spencer as opposed to being
and
so
they may
enthusiastic.
truly support Louis Reed in the sense of they agree with some of his policies, but it may also be one of those things where it's like they're more enthusiastically against another candidate, that they're blocking another candidate.
Well, St. Louis Public Radio reporter Rachel Lippman, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next Tuesday. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. I'm always glad to do it.
And if you're interested to hear about this debate that Rachel co-moderated, you can find that. There's video of it at stlpr.org/voter guide. Again, that's stlpr.org/voter guide. And on that page, you can also find St. Louis on the Air and politically speaking interviews with each of those four candidates. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU. We also have a quick programming note. In just a couple weeks, we'll be marking 1 full year since Missouri Governor Mike Parson declared a state of emergency amid the COVID-19 pandemic. That's just hours after then President Trump declared the pandemic a national emergency. On March 12th, we're planning a special edition of St. Louis on the Air devoted to reflections on the past year, and we would love to hear yours. What have you found yourself grieving in recent months? What has brought you joy or strength? What has surprised you the most during all of this? We invite you to share your reflection by leaving us a brief voicemail. Please include your first name and where you're calling from. You can call us at 314-516-6397 to leave us your message. That's a dedicated voicemail line no one will pick up. Again, that's 314-516-NEWS. And if you'd prefer to write out your thoughts, you can email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org and then join us March 12th for the on-air conversation. If you learned something new from today's episode, consider leaving us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the easiest way to help people discover our show. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.